Alright then, welcome back to part 2 of your how to solder. Today we will actually be doing some soldering, okay, soldering some wires together and soldering some wires to some terminals maybe. Okay, I'll show you how to do that. And very useful thing to do, okay, soldering wires to wires. You think that for a demo it's not really much to it, okay. What we're doing now, we're making PCBs. Well, soldering wire to wire is more common than you think, okay, and it's also very useful if around the home. Okay, you've got a kid's toy or something like that, the battery clip breaks, well, why throw away your kid's favourite toy? Why not repair it? And usually there's something like these. These are PP-free battery clips, okay, you can buy them off the shelf, okay, and come with some wire at the ends, okay, some terminals. Just chop off the old one, solder one of these on. Okay, other ones, this time of year you might be checking your Christmas decorations, okay. All that, unknotted them all, unknotted the lights, you've broken a cable, hey, why not solder it together? Done, okay. Soldering wires together, okay, it's the most easiest thing in the world to do, and it's the most common thing, okay, around the home, okay. After we're done now, we'll show you how to solder onto some terminals, like I said, and we'll look at, in part 3, starting to solder onto PCBs, okay, PCBs, strip board, whatever, some through-hole components, and so on. So we start, but before we start soldering, I thought, well, I missed this out in the last one, should have really covered it when I was talking about solder. And got some solder reels here, okay, solder wire, okay, this one is unleaded, okay, and this one is leaded, okay. Now, solder comes in lots, here we go, back again, people knocking on the doors, it's a busy life here. Okay, right, where was I? Yeah, solder, okay, not only does it come in leaded and unleaded varieties, okay, it's got different solder weightings, okay, and by that I mean the percentage content of, say, tin lead, how much lead you got and how much tin you got, and possibly a bit of silver as well, and on this one, your lead free, how much tin and copper it's got, and in some cases it might have a little bit of silver. Other ones have some, actually some of them, I've noticed one which has got germanium in it as well for some reason. I'm not too sure what the actual germanium content is meant to do for it. Need to do a bit of research on that, I haven't seen it before. But you can also get the unleaded with some nickel content as well. If you can get the nickel content one, so the tin, copper, nickel, that's brilliant stuff to use, okay. The finish, when you finish soldering, okay, your unleaded one will give you quite a dull joint, where your leaded one will give you a nice shiny joint, and sometimes the dull joints you can mistake it for dry joints, but having a nickel in your unleaded solder, okay, actually brings up the joint nice and shiny as if it was with the tin leaded one, okay, so it does help with identifying good joints and bad joints. So if you get the unleaded one, make sure it's tin copper with a little bit of nickel. If it's tin lead, it's just tin lead and maybe a bit of silver, and you can get this stuff with silver in it as well, okay. Silver does aid the wetting process, it does brighten up the joint and it makes for a better joint. So there we have it. The only trouble is, if you want silver, you want those extra materials rather than just the tin copper or the tin lead. They do get more expensive, okay. But so that's what's actually in your solder, but it's got different weights, different percentages of them, of quantities to make up your solder alloy, okay. In the case of tin lead, okay, you can get 50-50, 60-40, what other ones are there? It's the special one, it's about 62-63, I believe, 37 or something or other. That's the one which you really should use, okay. And the numbers, what do the numbers mean? It's actually the quantity of lead and solder. Okay, so it'll have, say, 63% of it of the metal will be lead. No, 63 of it will be tin, not lead. Yeah, 63 tin, and 37 will be lead, or it could be slightly less lead content because you've got maybe 1% less because you've got the 1% of silver in here. Okay, the reason why you get different weightings is dependent on the soldering job that you want to do. Okay, and it's also to do with how the solder actually melts. Okay, when a metal melts, it goes through. It's in 3 phases. Okay, there's 3 stages. First stage is when it's a solid. Okay, second stage is in its plastic state, and the third state is its liquid state. Okay, the plastic state is the intermediary zone where your solid turns into a liquid. Okay, it's a state where it's not fully in its liquid form, it's somewhere in between the two, and that region is where these percentages and these ratios between the metals varies. Okay, it's this plastic state. The 50-50 and the 60-40. Okay, if I draw this out on the whiteboard, you'll see a little bit better. Okay, if we do it as a bit like a time graph, timeline. Okay, so this is time. Okay, this is a sort of timeline, as it were. Fine. Okay, and we got our regions. Okay, so we got solid, plastic, and liquid. Okay, and it's this region, okay, that we're interested in. Okay, if it's 60/40 with your solder, this plastic region can be quite wide. Okay, the good thing is, if you're doing any soldering which you need, well, it's not only the plastic state, but it's also to do with your liquid state as well. What happens is, this region will go from, if you start melting the solder, it will go from a solid, it will take a long time to melt through the plastic layer into when it's fully liquid. So what happens is, when you're soldering onto something like PCB or a wire, you have to keep the soldering iron on the wire for longer and feed in the solder, and then keep the solder in its semi-liquid state in this region before it goes to a liquid and it starts flowing and the wetting process takes place. Because this liquid layer, this is where wetting takes place, this is where the wetting is. Okay, is down here. Okay, when it's in a liquid state, this is when it starts to where the solvent action takes place between the solder and the flux and the copper, and then merges to form a new alloy, so which I spoke to you about before. This is the region, and this plastic region, okay, is the one that actually varies depending on your ratio, okay, or your percentage of solid to tin to whatever, tin to lead. Problem with that is, one, you have to keep your soldering iron on your whatever you're soldering for a lot longer and feeding in the solder. The other point is, when you take the iron off, okay, it's got longer to travel back before it becomes a solid. Okay, so you have to keep hold of this joint. If you're doing it by hand, you're holding 2 wires, holding a wire with your finger, you know, you're going to end up burning your fingers. Okay, so you're having to heat up this for a longer period of time. The magic one, okay, which I mentioned before, is something like the 6337, something like that. This is the magic one. This is one that you want to get hold of, because this plastic region is very, very narrow. Okay, it's almost instantly goes from solid to liquid, almost instantly. As soon as you apply heat to the correct temperature to the solder, it's molten as soon as it hits the iron. Excellent. As soon as you take the heat away, okay, it snaps through this plastic layer, it goes back to a solid very, very, very quickly. Okay, so it doesn't take very long to melt, doesn't take long for the plastic region to form, doesn't take long to get to the liquid state, and yeah, this is the one that you want to get. Lead free, on the other hand, because you've got all these problems associated with it. It's got no lead in it, so you can't get its ratio, and now it's copper, and now you add chucking in things like germanium, nickel, silver, all these other junk items. Okay, these plastic region can vary quite dramatically from different solder types, so that's one drawback with going unleaded. It's more healthier, yes, but you have to be careful with the more soldering, because the plastic region and the liquid area, the longer it takes to get from the solid to the plastic, because you're heating up the solder, everything is a lot higher. Okay, so that's what I was saying. For your first time round, if you've never done soldering, get the tin lead one, get this ratio, you can't go wrong. Get the unleaded or get the 50-50 or the 60-40, and you're going to end up making a mess of things first time round. So, and even in afterwards, it's brilliant, it's one to get. Okay, so I thought I'd just run you through that. Now then, let's do some soldering and getting ready for soldering. Alright then, we're going to be doing some soldering, and before we start soldering we have to get the iron all set up and ready. So what we're going to do is switch it on, set the temperature to about 275, 280, okay, wait for it to start heating up. While that's on the go, we can prep some of our wires. Okay, now let's strip back some wire. When you're soldering wires together, make sure that you have a nice length of wire strips. Okay, and I'm using here for this demonstration some threaded solder. Okay, you can see the ends there, there's threads. Let's move it in front of the screen so you can see a bit clearer there. There we go. You can see all the threads. First thing that you do is to twist the threads together. Okay, you do a twist. Okay, this just holds the threads together by twisting. They all get bent into shape. Okay, so you can see there now. It's one long length, and we place it into our helping hands, ready to be tinned. Okay, I can show you how to tin some threaded wire. This particular one is just some old wire that I had knocking about. It's more or less the end of the reel. It's just 10 of 0.1 millimeter. Okay, and that's what we're going to do. And you always tin the cable in order to keep all of the threads together. So you solder the threads together before you actually do any work with it. If you don't solder the threads, when you start poking it through holes, like in PCBs, okay, one of the threads might get caught on the edge, and it will slowly unravel. Some of the threads go through, some of the threads don't, and you start to create short circuits along the board. So it's always best to twist them together and tin them. Also, tinning really does help the soldering, solder tape to the cable, and it makes a lot neater job. It makes the cable, the bare cable, more easier to handle. So that now I've got my chisel tip iron. Okay, and the tip's a little bit dirty, so first thing that you do is wet your sponge. Okay, you can get dry tip cleaners as well. They look like a bit like wire wool, but I'm using a damp sponge here. Okay, whenever you wet your sponge, don't use mineral water. Okay, most of us have got mineral water knocking around, bottles of it. Okay, it's horrible stuff to use. It's full of salts and minerals and metals and God knows what other junk, and it eats away at your soldering tip. Okay, like nothing. It's horrible stuff to use. Use either some deionised water if possible, or distillated water. If you can't get hold of that, tap water. Okay, never ever use mineral water. So first thing that we'll do is we need to clean the tip, so brush it on your wet sponge. Okay, it doesn't have to be saturated, but nice and damp. And there we go, we've got a nice shiny tip. Okay, nice shiny chisel tip, you can see the tip there. And we're gonna do some soldering. So break off a bit of solder from your reel. Okay, and wrap it around your fingers a couple of times, so that you just got a small piece of solder like that, a couple of centimetres long. That's all that you need. Don't hold it right at the very back, because this flops about and you've got no accuracy or anything. Okay, so a little bit of solder broken off in your hands. And what you do is you put a little bit on the tip first, creates a little ball on the tip, okay, and that helps to transfer the heat to whatever you're going to solder. Okay, you don't use the solder what's on the tip to solder with, you use the solder wire. This is just to help the heat profile, okay, just to help heat the get the heat onto whatever you're soldering. So to tin your wire, hold it in your helping hands, hold your soldering iron under the wire, and you drag it down, applying the solder from the opposite side to the wire and not to the iron. Okay, and that is how you tin your wire. Again, before you put the soldering iron back, just clean the tip off. Always very good to clean your tip of your iron, okay, because it's always dirty, main key, you might have bits of solder stuck to it from your last job, and also where it's been hanging about, okay, the tip's going to get dirty, it's going to get dusty. You know, if it's close to the end of its life, it's going to start oxidising, etc. So you just clean up the tip of your iron to keep, you know, cleanliness is the key to soldering. Now that's all tinned. First joint that I'm going to show you when joining cables together is a hook joint. It's a universal joint. Okay, you use it for joining cables together, soldering terminals, solder tags, etc. It's a really useful one to learn, so we'll start with this one first. And all that you do is, if you're going to be soldering things like tags, solder tags, okay, normally eyelets with normally they're little round eyelets and a hole to one side on a strip of metal, okay, bend it to the right with your needle nose pliers, and you can put that through your eyelet, and you can solder on either side. You can get yourself a nice joint, but in this case we're doing a hook, we're doing two cables together, okay, and you bend it around your needle nose pliers, okay. You can use round pliers, okay. If you can't, needle noses are fine, and depending on how thick the wire is, if you're using a very thick wire, use the bottom of your needle nose pliers to bend it around, so you end up with a large loop. If it's a very thin wire like this, you use the tip and you have a very small loop. Okay, so you create your loop, looks something like that, and you trim it off to create a hook. Okay, so you can see there, I've got a hook. Okay, don't know how clear that is, but hopefully you can see that. Okay, so we've got a hook, one tin soldered wire hook. So we're going to do the same for the other cables. We've got some other wire here. I'm just going to tin that, create another hook, and for another hook. So I'll do that right now. Okay, welcome back, and got all my wires tinned now. So got one hook wire done. I'll leave that on there so I know where it is. We will create other hook exactly the same way. Pinch it just above the insulation, bend it round, trim it off with our wire cutters, and there we go, that's our other one. Okay, the benefits of using a hook joint, why we use them is because you can hook your come on, realise how it's going, there we go, you can hook your cables together. Okay, you can see them there, they're hooked together. What that means is you can place it in your helping hands, you don't have to hold the other side particularly securely, you can solder it quite easily and then just trim off the excess. Okay, it's a very useful one to do. But before you do any soldering, okay, you prep your cable, what you might want to do is use a bit of heat shrink, okay, before you actually create your hooks. Okay, so I'll bend that hook back out, get yourself some heat shrink tubing, trim off a little bit, pop it over the top of your cable, okay, create your hook, okay, you need to put the heat shrink on one side, on one of your wires, okay, create a hook, there we go, excellent. So, all that, in theory really, all that you have to do is to
can unwire your helping hands and hook on the other one. Done. You don't have to use the other clip to your helping hands. It's on there, it's secure, it's not going anywhere. And then solder the joints together. Yeah, just lost my solder somewhere, so let's grab another bit. Okay, you can never have too much solder, get this little big reel. Okay, you do get through it. When you solder it together, just as before, place your iron, in this case on the join, feed your solder in like so, and there we have it. It's been joined together. Soldered joint. Once it's soldered, check it. Okay, move it about, twist it, whatever. It's nice and solid. Okay, you can see you still got the hooks there, and you just trim it off. Trim off the ends of the hooks, and there we have it. Bring your heat shrink down across the join like that, and take your iron and you can just shrink it in place. So just use the heat from your iron down one side, down the other side. Don't touch, if you're going to use soldering iron, don't use the tip of your iron, okay, where you solder is. Just use the edge of your iron, okay, or the edge of your tip for this, because you don't want any crap to get on the very tip. So there we have it, all nice and done, all shrunk in place, it's not moving anywhere, stuck tight, joint to good un. So that's the hook joint, and like I said, it's really universal one to do, quite easy. Okay, next one that I'm going to show you is the parallel. Okay, so this is joining together again, two wires. Okay, place them next to each other in parallel, and you twist your end tinned. Okay, you can only really do this one if you've got a length of wire, so they're all tied together. Okay, they're twisted together. So you twist your cable, you tin it, and then you twist them again. Because there's already solder on these tins, usually all that you have to do is run your iron underneath, up and down the cable a few times, okay, and the solder will actually flow to each other. That's already on the cable, and it will be soldered. Sometimes you need to add in a little extra. Okay, so it's always good practice just to add on that a little bit more. It only has to be a slight touch, because you've already got solder in there on your joint, so they're all soldered together, but you end up with this huge wire hanging off the end. So just trim that back like you did with your hooks. Okay, trim it back, and just before, use your heat shrink. In this case, you slide it over the top last. Okay, no need to put it on the cable first, you put it on last, heat shrink it down, and that's it. Jobs are good on that. So that's another type of join that you can do for wires. Okay, it's the parallel join. The last one that I'm going to show you for cabling is the end-to-end. Okay, sometimes you might have one of these battery clips, maybe in your kid's toy or something, or I don't know, some sort of appliance, and the wires go around here, and you might want to put on a new one. Okay, you might have to solder end-to-end. Okay, you have to keep the cable short so it doesn't interfere with the battery holder or anything like that. So you might have to keep the cable short. Because of that, you can't do the hook joint and you can't do the parallel joint, okay, because you don't have the cable, you don't have the length. So what I'm going to show you now is an end-to-end joint. It's very similar to the ones. It's actually both of your clips in your helping hands. Hold one to one end very close, bring them together, okay, and clip in your other cable. You hold one close and one far away, simply because you want one to stay rigid, okay, what the other floppy cable can lean against. Okay, you've got one for movement and one to hold in place. Because it is a git trying to do this one, it takes practice. Just like before with all the other joints, you've got a solder in the joint, so you don't need to do a lot. And just like tinning, you hold the iron underneath your wire, you feed it into the top, very small amount, and plug it up. There we go. Okay, you can see it's flown apart. Like I said, this is a very awkward one to do, end to end. Okay, so we'll replace them back together again, and redo the join again, and there we have it. Soldered together, and that's end to end. Okay, very strong again. Okay, because they're touching each other, the conductors in parallel with each other. Okay, you've got a good surface area to solder to between the two, so it's another strong join. Just like the first one with the hook joint though, make sure your insulation is on first. Okay, your heat shrink is on first so you can shrink it round. Okay, that's that one. What some people do say is that you can, this heat shrink tubing, okay, this stuff here, can use a lighter or a match or a lit match or a naked flame to actually shrink this. Yes, that's true, but what happens when you got a multi-core cable? You've got loads of cables all together. You've got say 3-4 of these wires all sticking out. Try to solder one which is broken. Well, you use a naked flame, you're going to end up destroying the insulation on the other one. So you create open, you take the insulation off, you melt it off just while you're heat shrinking the other one. Okay, don't use your naked flames. Always use a controlled source. Heat gun, soldering iron. Use a soldering iron. You know where the heat's going. Heat gun. You can shield the other cables with a bit of tin foil or something, and you can just melt the heat shrink. You can shrink it around with a heat gun around the single cable that you want. Okay, don't use naked flame. It's not that. Yeah, it's convenient. It's easy. You might have a lighter in your back pocket. You think, yeah, brilliant, but you can end up damaging other components in your surgery or other cables without realising it. It's kind of like unintentional damage just because you want it to do a quick fix. So do it the slow way and you do it the professional way, and you can't go wrong. Now, what I'll say about the hook joints and the parallel joints, you've got connectors like these are headers. Okay, and you can in actual fact do a single cable, just like what we did, the end to end. So you put your heat shrink over the end, you solder end to end, so they're parallel. So I can show you doing that now. These wires don't have, the header pins don't have any solder on, so that's always good to pre-tin first. So pre-tin one of these. Okay, and you just have to bring them together similar to the end to end. And lob a bit of solder on, and there you have it, soldered. Okay, simple. Other type of joints which you can do, like I said, your hook joint. Okay, you can take your cable, create your hook, and you can, if this is your connector, you do it at the other end, you can hook it on, sorted, so you can do that one. With the hook joints, try and keep your hook close to the insulation, okay, for these ones, simply because, I'll go down and bend this one, because you're going in at 90 degrees to the pin, you may hit the cable on this pin on the opposite side, so always keep the insulation in and hook it with the insulation facing the next pin along. That way when you put the next cable in, you've got a little bit of insulation, okay, stopping you from shorting out against the next pin along, okay, creating problems. Okay, just a little bit of common sense there. So you can do that one, hang that one on there, just like before. It's hooked on, you don't need to worry about it, and soldering done. Okay, trim off the end of your hook, sorted. So hook joint is quite universal. You can do it on headers, etc. Okay, turrets, tags, whatever. Okay, it's quite universal, and that's all there is to it. Okay, next one I'm going to do I suppose, will be solder pots. Actually, yeah, I'll do a solder pot on the next one before I do any PCB work. Okay, so we'll cover some through hole. Okay, through hole soldering. So I was soldering onto PCBs, going through the holes. Okay, show you a really good join. Okay, let's get a good joint, and we'll do a solder pot as well on the back of a D-type connector. Okay, so another one. Connectors again. Okay, soldering wires. Right. So part 3, we'll cover some connectors, D-types, the same thing. Okay, nothing special there. We'll do some PCB work through hole, so we'll solder some wires onto pads and maybe some components or something. Okay, once you do it once, it's exactly the same for all the other components or connectors, it's no different. And then in part 4 we'll look at doing surface mount. So I'll show you how to, where have I got one that's already been done? Here's one. So part 4, coming up in the future, we'll show you how to do surface mount components. Okay, there's that side, nothing on that side, no through hole, all surface. See you next time.